Welcome to the launch of MoveOn's new live stream series, The Moment with MoveOn. I'm Olga. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I will be your host this evening. As folks are joining the chat, please feel free to share your name, what your pronouns are, and where y'all are coming from, so we can get to know you. And I can see that some of you are already doing that. So welcome, Jordan. Welcome, Liz. Welcome people from California and Colorado, all over the place. For tonight, we'd love to kick off the event as people stream in with a little icebreaker. As you may or may not know, we're going to be talking tonight, all night, about recovery recess. And you may or may not know what that is, but if you don't right now, stick around, and you definitely will by the time we're done. We'd love to ask the chat a little icebreaker. When most people think about recess, they think about playgrounds and swing sets and double dutch and hopscotch. And I'd like to invite you to share in the chat what was your favorite thing to do at recess as a kid. I'll start. I love to play clapping games. I actually had to look this up because as an adult or close enough to it, I had no idea what these were called. But like Miss Susie had a steamboat, the steamboat had a bell, that. So I'd love to know what kind of things you love to do as a kid during recess. So feel free to jump in and keep introducing yourselves as well. Julie from Arizona. We have Leah playing Foursquare. Excellent. Really chill guy. Sneak off the playground and try to escape. I see you, really chill guy. Jump rope. Cool. Yeah. That is super relatable. Fantastic. So again, I'm Olga, and I'll be your host. So for those of us joining us, welcome to the debut of this live stream, The Moment with MoveOn. And we're going to be talking about the recovery recess. We're so grateful that you've joined us, whether it's supporting a candidate, fighting to pass progressive legislation, or working to change this world into one where we can all thrive. MoveOn members are committed to an inclusive and progressive future. So welcome to you, whether you're already a part of the MoveOn community or whether this is your first time with us. We are so glad to have you here with us tonight. We have a great program planned for today, including MoveOn's Executive Director, Rahna Epting, Congresswoman Katie Porter, and Ai-jen Poo, the co-founder and executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. We're here to talk today about recovery recess, which I said, what it is, how you can participate, and how we can show up together to demand that Congress go bold and go big to deliver jobs, care, justice, climate solutions, and real democracy for all of our people. To kick us off, I'd love to introduce our amazing executive director at MoveOn, Rahna Epting. And stick around because we're going to want to hear from you. Start getting your questions for Rahna ready now, and we'll be picking a few to answer in just a few moments. So with that, welcome, Rahna.
Hi, thank you, Olga. Hello, everybody. I'm Rahna Epting, the Executive Director here at MoveOn, and I am so excited to join with all of you here this evening and with our special guests, U.S. Representative Katie Porter and the brilliant strategist Ai-jen Poo with National Domestic Workers Alliance. This is going to be an awesome hour, so I hope you're here to stay. And we are gathering tonight for two reasons. Number one, to celebrate, and number two, to organize. So we are celebrating indeed, because the fact is that just this past week, our president and this new Congress passed a historic relief bill called the American Rescue Package. And in the famous words of our new president, Joe Biden, it's a BFD. The American Rescue Package is incredible. It is designed to cut child poverty in half, extend unemployment benefits, help people who can't afford health insurance, funds the ability to reopen our schools, supports and provides relief to small businesses, and my favorite, provides more money for more vaccines so that we can hug our loved ones again. It is without question the most progressive piece of economic legislation to pass Congress in recent memory. And it will help provide massive relief to our society and our communities. So yes, indeed, it is a BFD. It is a big deal. And let's be clear, it would not be possible. It would not be possible without the hard work of all of us. Everything that we put in to get us to this day. So think about it. Would this bill have been law if Donald Trump was still president? Of course not. Would this bill be law if Mitch McConnell were still the majority leader? Of course not. Would this bill be law if we just sat quietly over the last 4 years and let the Republican Party steamroll this country and our democracy? Definitely not. This bill, the American Rescue Package that we are celebrating, that is going to provide direct relief to our communities, it is the direct result of years of mobilizing, of volunteering, of making calls, of being active in our community, of taking action. It is the result of winning the November election and then turning around and winning the Georgia election in January. It's the result of our votes ushering a new era of governance. So in other words, this bill, the American Rescue Package, is law because of us. We did the work. And tonight, I want you to celebrate. I want you to take that in. It was a rough 4 years. We're in a totally new place now. And a lot of people's lives will be better because of this bill. Lives will be saved. Children will have food on their table because of this bill. More people will get the vaccine because of this bill. And our economy will work, not just for those at the top, but for all of us. We will start to recover because of the American Rescue Package. So thank you. Thank you for doing your part all throughout the years and even most recently. But there's more work to do. There's so much more work to do. This was step one. The pandemic has hit so many people so hard. And if we're being honest, many people weren't doing that great before. This bill is great, but we didn't put in all the work over the last year and years for one piece of legislation. No, we put in the work to transform this country, and this is just the beginning. So now we get to the second reason for our call tonight, to organize, to build our momentum. And because Congress is soon going to be debating the second phase of the COVID relief bill, and that is COVID recovery. A second package designed to get our economy on track for the long haul. That's what we're looking for. Congress needs to hear from us loud and clear that what we want them to do is to go big, to be bold, to make transformative change, to make our economy work for all of us. And look, the problems are big. We have inherited epic crises. And so the solutions must be as epic. And now is not the time to get complacent, to feel like, okay, our work is done. Now is not the time to settle for half measures or to settle for politics as usual. Now is the time we go big. And I have my 4-year-old daughter here who is very excited as well. So this is, yes. So this is why so many of our allies across the movement are organizing Recovery Recess. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm really sorry. This is not what, honey? Well, we're talking about recess, recovery recess. And it's a time where we're going to fight to make sure that Congress passes the legislation that our country deserves and our communities deserve. So I'll make it quick and we'll take some questions, but just to close out, we're talking about recovery recess over the next 2 weeks. You'll hear more about that tonight. You can volunteer, you can lead actions in the field to make sure that your members of Congress hear our voices and hear our demands. All of this is possible when we come together, when we leverage our collective voices and take action. We did it to win the elections. Now let's win what we fought for. Back to you, Olga.
Thank you so much, Rahna, and thank you so much for showcasing that you're never too young to start being an activist. So welcome, Ruby. We'd love to open up now the chat now for some Q&A. If you have some questions for Rahna about the relief bill, recovery recess, about anything else you're thinking about, please drop your question in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And I'd like to note that one of the questions I saw someone came in late and asked was recovery recess defined? So Rahna, would you like to take this moment to perhaps define recovery recess for folks watching?
Yes, so recess is the time where Congress goes back to their home districts. They fly back from Washington, D.C., and they go home and they meet with their constituents. And normally, in a life without COVID, they're actually holding town halls in person. People are going to meet with them in their offices. But, things are a little different right now. So some of your members of Congress may be holding town halls, but most of them might be holding virtual ones. Some of them won't be holding them at all. But this is an incredibly critical time for the progressive movement, for all of us to claim this space, to make sure that the mandate that got people elected into office is made, their promise is made true on, and to make sure that they hear our voices. So when we say recovery recess, that's a span of March 29th through April 11th. We'll be holding actions. You can go to recoveryrecess.org and you can host your own action or event, or you can attend someone else's that's in your neighborhood. And you can make sure that we're demanding for big, bold, transformative, green jobs, care jobs, jobs. That is the message. And we want to make sure that the economic relief includes a pathway to citizenship for essential work, for immigrants and essential workers.
Amazing answer. And I'd like to take one more question before we cut to our next guest. And the last question, I think, is do you know if there are going to be any more stimulus payments, or was that the last one?
That's a great question for our next guest, actually, but people should have received their $1,400 check in the mail over this last week, and there will be more ongoing. But we can get in the nitty gritty of the American Rescue Package. I think when we hear other questions, we can gather them up and answer them at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rahna. I am super excited to introduce our next guest. We'd like to welcome Congresswoman Katie Porter. Welcome. We are so happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much. And it's fun to be on here with Ai-jen Poo. Fun fact, this is the second event I've done today with Ai-jen. Ms. Poo was testifying before the House Oversight Committee. And then the second fun fact is that Ai-jen and I went to high school together, which is a little known fact. And so our high school class produced and Ai-jen an amazing champion for the American people. So
that's absolutely amazing. As an excellent segue to the next thing that I was going to ask you. This is the debut of the Moment with MoveOn series, and we are actually starting out, rather than doing formal introductions, we've been playing a little game where our audience gets to learn some more about you and play along by sharing 3 things about you. And the audience gets to guess whether or not those things are true. So we have a list of 3 things about you that might be true, might be made up, and we'd love to ask our viewers in the chat to guess if each one is true or false as we go. Does that sound good to you? Excellent. Good. So I actually have a list of 3 facts from you. Would you like to share this first fact, or should I be mysterious and introduce?
Go ahead.
All right, great. So the first fact is Representative Katie Porter has traveled around the world solo. So it's the first fact, and it's up to you to see whether or not that is true or false, what your gut instinct is on that. The second fact is her minivan has 200,000 miles on it, over 200,000 miles. And the third fact is her favorite food is mac and cheese. So feel free to guess in the chat what you think, whether or not those things are true or false. And Congresswoman, would you like to illuminate us as to which of those things are true or false?
Yes. So the first fact, I took a solo trip around the world. That is true. I did that between college and going to law school. I went west to east, starting in San Francisco and going all the way around to Morocco. It was about 4.5 months. And my backpack that I took with me weighed about 21 pounds. And I threw everything away when I was done with the 4 or 5 months. I never want to see those 2 t-shirts and that pair of pants and that pair of shorts ever again. The second fact you mentioned was that my minivan has over 200,000 miles on it. And that is false. It does have a duct tape side view mirror right now because somebody hit it and did not act in an accountable fashion and did not leave a note. But it actually only has 134,000 miles on it and is going strong. I just had it repaired, and I intend to continue driving it until I hit that 200,000 mile mark, or until my kids all go to college, whichever comes first. And then the third fact is that mac and cheese is my favorite food. False. I hate mac and cheese. And I'm like a weirdo, I realize, but I despise mac and cheese. It's a childhood scarring experience that involved the stomach flu that I will not share with you. But to this day, I do not If I even sit at a restaurant and someone orders it, I ask to be reseated. So I have this like weird, creepy aversion to macaroni and cheese. So please don't send me, send me whiteboard markers. Don't send me mac and cheese, please.
That's hilarious. That was super fun. And I don't think I've ever met anyone with like a near mac and cheese phobia before. So thank you for being the first person I've met with that. And so now we'd actually like to jump to the first question. Representative Porter, can you tell us about the next big fight that's gearing up in Congress around the recovery package and what our members should know about that?
Yeah, so what we're working on right now in Congress is going to be the transportation, the infrastructure bill, and really thinking about how do we make investments in our country that help our economy, not just recover, but as President Biden has said, build back better. And one of the things that's really exciting about this is the way that we're thinking about infrastructure investments is not just about jobs, in the construction industry, but about what we mean by infrastructure, including childcare, caregivers, people who take care of seniors, and investing in that caregiving economy. And that's really what it is. It's its own economy. It deserves it for us to make an investment in it. And we have to do that if we're going to be globally competitive. So I think when a lot of people hear infrastructure, they think to themselves roads and bridges. Yes, but also water, also conservation, also clean energy, also retrofitting our schools. There's so much of that work to be done. So that's a big thing Congress is working on. My personal big fight, that's sort of Congress as a whole. My personal big fight that I've been working on is trying to eliminate something from our tax code that I call the single parent penalty. One of the big wins in the American Rescue Plan was an expanded child tax credit. Increasing the amount of that tax credit to $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17 and to $3,600 for younger children. But right now, the way that's written, if you are a child living with a single parent, you are less likely to receive that child tax credit because the income cutoff is different, and or you might receive less of that. And let me tell you, there is no discount out there for single parents, not at the grocery store, not at the movie theater, not at child care centers. The focus of the child tax credit is the child. And so we need to treat children living in households with different kinds of family structures, whether married, single, grandparents. We need to make sure that those children are getting the equal opportunity to get the benefits of nutritious food, adequate housing, and quality childcare and after-school programming with that expanded child tax credit. So eliminate the single parent penalty, and I'm proud to be partnering with Ayanna Pressley, among others, in working on this effort.
Thank you so much for that. We'd like to switch now to take some questions from the chat. Apologies, my my headphone just fell out. Hooray, we're all alive. There's children, headphones are falling out. It's great, it's a party. So if you have questions for Congressman Katie Porter right now, if you could drop them in the chat so we can ask them. The first question that's popping out is from Piano Keys Fun. Do you think the Biden-Harris administration will be able to make progress in immigration policy?
Yeah, so immigration policy is moving forward in the House already. We passed the Dream and Promise Act and a farm worker modernization bill. So those already passed the House and have gone over to the Senate, hopefully for action. And then we're beginning to work on a more comprehensive immigration reform bill while continuing to do oversight of the existing immigration system, which was left in very poor shape by President Trump. And so thinking about sort of all of the related facets of immigration in terms of thinking about the purpose of foreign aid to make sure that people can continue to live in their country safely, try to address the root causes of migration, making sure that we're investing where appropriate in common sense border technology. For example, understanding that most of the immigration that happens and most of the drug smuggling, for example, what happens at ports of entry. And so we need to do more there. And then making sure that we're thinking about how immigration can help our country and does help our country in terms of providing both workers, but also in terms of providing skills and resources for our workforce. So I think we're going to see a broader immigration move forward, probably through Congress into this summer, but already really proud that we're delivering on the promise that President Obama made to our dreamers, that if they would come forward, we would be able to welcome them into our society and offer them a pathway to citizenship.
Thank you for that. And I know we only have a few more minutes with you, Congresswoman. So 2 last questions that are getting a lot of response in the chat. The first one is from Megan Prendergast. How do you think we can best help Asian communities during this time when they're increasingly targeted?
Asian communities?
Asian communities, pardon me. Yes.
Yeah. So, we're definitely seeing a spike in hate crimes toward the API population. In Orange County, the area that I represent, is home to the 3rd largest Asian American population in the United States. And Asian Americans, one, really importantly, are Americans. 2, they are our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues. There are people that we worship with and work with, go to school with, and learn from. And we need to both condemn API hate and also make sure that we're fighting to provide a level playing field of opportunity, including for representation in government service and in elected office for people from the API community. So it's really, really important that we think about this not just as what we have to do in terms of condemning a hate crime after it happened, but what do we have to do to empower our community to be more welcoming and be more respectful of people from different places going forward?
Well said, and super grateful for all the work that you do and are doing. Last question. In what ways, this is from Kaylin Parks, in what ways can I make change within my community? Especially during this pandemic, I find that it's harder to find volunteer work and opportunities.
Yeah, it definitely is harder to find volunteer work. I felt that myself, including for my children and some of the volunteer opportunities that they enjoyed. But at the same time, the pandemic is breaking down some of the boundaries that we had. And so I encourage you to join in groups, particularly think about joining in a group that may be more narrow in focus, but national, that you wouldn't be able to participate in if you had to travel physically. And so there are things that are happening on Zoom or happening virtually that otherwise just wouldn't be possible to participate in. And then I think make sure, and I know this might sound simple, but make sure you're signed up to get information from your city, from your county, from your state, and from your federal representative. And so we're seeing that this pandemic is straining all of those resources, federal, state, county, and local, and is requiring all of us to help respond. So I have people who subscribe to my newsletter, but one of the things we do is we try to amplify for them when our local government is taking those federal dollars and turning them into something like a rental assistance program that can be helpful. So I really encourage people to make sure that they're doing their part. And of course, those of us in elected office have to do our part to continue to reach out to communities and let them know what we're doing and how we can help. But I think that there's that opportunity with this pandemic. You have a little less commute time, maybe you're able to join in something remotely that you wouldn't be able to join in if things were in person. And so I miss that person-to-person contact, but I also am finding that I'm able to do events and hear from people and hear from communities that I might not otherwise be able to do so if I had to physically travel there.
Excellent. And I know we have like 1 minute left with you. We're asking folks to sign up for recoveryrecess.org. If you have a second, do you have anything to say around why it's important for folks to speak out and attend events during these next 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's incredibly important to make sure that your voice is being heard. We have real choices to make in the direction that this country goes. And the return, people who say, I just want things to return to normal before COVID, had a pretty privileged normal. For a lot of people, a return isn't good enough. There are underlying issues in this country that we have to address, everything from structural racism to the student loan debt crisis, to equal pay for equal work. And so there's a lot more to be done. And so in this next couple of weeks, as we have a president who's moving through his first 100 days and beginning to think about what comes next, as we have states and localities getting an unprecedented amount of federal resources. Make your voice heard so that they can spend that money and make those investments and make that policy in a way that changes our community and our economy for the better.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Congresswoman. And thank you to everyone who asked questions. We look forward to having you join us again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. If you're just joining us, this is the moment with MoveOn. We're talking about recovery recess. As we've been talking about, members of Congress are heading home for Congress's spring recess, and they need to hear from us now. It's time for Congress to urgently deliver green jobs, care jobs, justice, green infrastructure, climate solutions, indigenous tribal sovereignty, and real democracy for all of our people. Socially distanced events are taking place. They're going to take place in person and online throughout recess, March 29th to April 11th, including the Time to Thrive Day of Action, March 31st, led by the Green New Deal Network, when we'll urge Congress to pass a transformational economic recovery package that addresses climate, care, jobs, and justice. You can go right now. I suggest you open another tab so you don't lose us as you do so, but you can go right now to recoveryrecess.org to sign up, where you'll be directed to a map of actions to join. So you know, masks and a physical distancing plan are required for all events, so people are doing this safely. And you'll also be able to create your own action. And if for whatever reason you aren't able to attend in person or host an event, you can participate online. So highly recommended checking that out. Again, that URL is recoveryrecess.org. Now I'd like to bring on our next guest, Ai-jen Poo. Ai-jen is the co-founder and executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, a nonprofit organization working to bring quality work, dignity, and fairness to the growing numbers of workers who care and clean in our homes, the majority of whom are immigrants and women of color. Welcome, Ai-jen.
Thanks so much for having me, Olga. It's great to be here. And hello, MoveOn family. I'm so excited to have some time with you.
What the audience could not see, I'm pretty sure, is there were multiple times that Ai-jen was doing tiny little dances as the Congressman was speaking earlier, which was delightful to watch. So super excited to have this conversation with you. We're going to play the same little game we played earlier, If You Were Game, in terms of asking you some facts about yourself and seeing, having the people guess whether things are true or false. So we'll ask our audience in the chat to guess if each one's true or false as we go. And I'd love to invite you, to kick it off by just sharing a fact about yourself.
Great. And before I do that, I will say that Congresswoman Porter this morning on the hearing was so amazing. It was incredible to see her in action. And she just was so powerful in making the argument around this idea of the single parent penalty, and just the methodical argument and the personal nature of it. And it was so powerful and amazing to bear witness to. And it's a reminder of how it feels and what it looks like to have elected leaders who really embody our values and who fight the way that we do for the country that we want. Okay, so 3 things about me. First, I'm really superstitious. Second, I am an introvert. Third, I have a fear of heights.
So I have some guesses, but if people want to take, someone's jumping in saying they bombed last time, scared to guess this time. Do not be scared. Jump in.
Do not be scared.
Yeah, do not be scared. If you want to jump in and guess, any guesses in the chat. Someone suggests all 3 are false. I like that. Bold. Someone suggests that the second one is false. Personally, I would say that you being superstitious is false is my guess. But someone says all 3 of them are true. So would you like to share, some people have had some chances to weigh in. Would you like to share which ones are true and false?
So it is true that I'm really superstitious and that I'm an introvert. And it is false that I have a fear of heights. Heights don't bother me at all. In fact, the higher the mountain, the better. So yeah, I am very superstitious. I always make a wish when it's 11:11. I never walk underneath a ladder. All the things. Whenever I have an eyelash, I make a wish and blow it. I light candles. Yeah, I'm very superstitious.
Creature after my own heart. I actually guessed that you weren't, because I think I might be. So, lovely. Hi, friendly creature. Completely relate. And thank you so much for sharing about the hearing this morning. Congresswoman is a powerhouse, and thank you for highlighting what it means to have people who actually represent our values.
That's right.
Who fight for us. Yeah, because that has not always been true in recent history. So it's really heartening to see more of that coming to the forefront. I'd like to move on to the first question. There are a lot of things right now in the recovery package to meet all of the multiple challenges that we're facing. Can you tell us a little more about one or two pieces that you personally are really excited about?
Oh, in jobs and recovery?
In the recovery package. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am really, really excited about the idea that we could build a care economy that actually supports us to take care of the people that we love while we're working. And this is something that is really long overdue. The fact that we don't have universal childcare or paid leave or home and community-based services available for people with disabilities or older people, it's a huge, huge problem and challenge that we have kind of borne on our own as individuals. And if for some reason we struggle, we think it's a personal failure, or that we didn't save, or we don't have the right job, or we did something wrong. And in reality, care is a need that we all share, and it's a public good. And the whole entire role of government is to support us around the things that we need support around, and to solve problems that the market can't solve. And care is one of those things that it's essential infrastructure. When we think about roads and bridges and broadband as things that enable commerce and everything else to be possible in our economy, what could be more fundamental and essential than good childcare, the ability to have home care for our aging loved ones? I mean, this is absolutely essential. And in the recovery package, we could invest in our care economy in a way that we never have before, in a totally transformative way. And that would also enable care workers, like the workers that I work with every single day, to have good jobs and to be able to take care of their families too. Right now, the average income of a home care worker in this country is $17,000 per year. So the people that we're counting on to take care of us can't take care of their own loved ones on the incomes that they earn. The federal government could change that literally overnight in the recovery package and make these jobs good jobs. And that would not only benefit those workers and their families, but all of us, because we would have the support we need to get back to work. So I'm super excited about the care economy and what's possible there, and that it is an equity strategy because it will disproportionately benefit women and women of color who really hold that work for us in this economy. And so, I don't know, it feels like such a game changer to me.
Yeah, as someone who's lived in various countries and seeing how that line is different, and things that, I think in America we don't think are things that we're allowed to have, that should be owed to us by our government. Like, it's so striking. I saw a meme yesterday that said the jobs that require the least empathy are paid the most, and require the most empathy are paid the least. The people who actually listen and take care of us being sort of valued the least in society. Definitely feels like something needs to change.
Doesn't make any sense. It's upside down.
Yeah. And speaking of care, coronavirus still clearly a serious public health threat. How can people make their voices heard during these next 2 weeks when we aren't, doing things we do in the past, like indoor town halls or office visits? What would you say to people watching?
Well, there's lots of ways to do events that are safe. So there are going to be social distance events happening, many of them outside. and there will be safety precautions. And we all can take responsibility for our safety too, and make sure that we're socially distanced and wearing masks and staying safe. There are also ways of participating online. There's so many ways in which you can reach out to your members of Congress, organize a meeting for your squad and your neighborhood to meet with your congressional delegation, even their staffers. It's so important. Any way and every way we can have our voices heard in this period is going to be essential, because this opportunity to impact the jobs and recovery strategy going forward is going to have generational implications. This is a policy. It's kind of like the New Deal moment, where we have the opportunity to reset our economic policies coming out of this crisis in a way that address so many of the pre-existing conditions we had coming in that made us so vulnerable, that created so much harm. So now is the time to really be creative. And people are going to be doing really creative things like drop-offs in offices, creative actions, projections, deliveries, and all of it's fair game.
Thank you for elevating that. I think particularly now when it feels like a lot of our regular avenues are closed off. I know that a bunch of folks in our MoveOn audience actually are super creative individuals. So people have more creative ways that they want to participate. Matters now more than ever. We're going to be taking a few questions from the chat in a moment. So if you have questions for Ai-jen, please feel free to start dropping them in the chat now. For our last question from us, MoveOn members on the stream and people around the country just made a ton of calls to Congress to pass the COVID relief bill after doing a ton of work this election. What do you say to folks who may not be feeling energized, after showing up and doing all of this work and the string of extraordinarily emotionally taxing events that have happened in the near recent past? What do you say to people, who might not be feeling energized for them to keep going?
It's a really good question. And I will say, if you're feeling tired and you're feeling tapped, totally makes sense. I feel you, and it's so fair. And we are living in a really, really special time in this country. We have our democracy just had a near-death experience, and we're not out of the woods. And we've just been through a pandemic that has crazy implications on our physical, spiritual, economic health as a country. And this window that we have right here, right now, to shape policy is kind of a once in several generations moment where we can actually make big change on almost all the things that you probably care about and have wondered about, like, when are we going to see change on this issue? We might see it now. So this is not a time to slow down. You can tap in other people. You can think about it like a relay, because this is a marathon. We're going to be in this for a while. And this is a very special window. I think about like the time when it was like the New Deal, right? We were also coming out of a time of crisis and social movements on the rise. And we were able to enact sweeping policies that reset our economic and policy frameworks for generations. Same thing during the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, these types of policies are possible in moments where you have such disruption and opening and movement energy, like what we've been building for the last 4 years. We have to cash in on that for the future of our country, for future generations. Our kids and our grandkids are going to ask us, what were we doing in that time? And what was it like when the recovery package was being discussed, and you'll have stories. You'll be able to tell them what you did during recovery recess, and it'll be awesome.
I love you pointing out that we're at a historical sort of change point, and how many of those seem like they're happening one on top of the other, and probably, one causes the next, which means that people can have outsized impact right now.
Absolutely. That's right.
And it's also helpful to keep in mind the marathon aspect, because I know that a lot of people tend to show up for this workshop because they care. And so it tends to feel like a sprint that just goes on. So the idea of being like, you can have a baton and you can tap in and out, because this fight, keeps going, is really, really helpful. I'd like to take some questions from the chat now. I know that we've been populating already with some questions. We have a question from Anagram. How are we going to get the minimum wage increase that we need?
We're going to have to organize and push and demand it. We actually have more support than we ever have. It's an incredibly popular issue. The only reason why it hasn't moved forward is because of very powerful lobbies that have been throwing money around to try to stop us. But at the end of the day, people are stronger and more powerful than any special interest lobby. And so we just have to keep at it. We have more momentum than we ever have, and we just have to keep going.
It feels like the people in the special interest pockets, their job is to specifically make us feel like we don't have power, so we don't show up. So thank you for the reminder.
Great point.
Of how powerful we are. Yeah. I have another question from the chat. I don't see who asked this, but someone is asking, in your opinion, how do you think we can end the filibuster? Can we?
Oh, well, I mean, I work with domestic workers, and we've always been told everything that we set our sights towards is impossible. Domestic workers want a Bill of Rights in New York. That's impossible. That'll never happen. Domestic workers want to organize. Domestic workers can't be organized. That's not possible, right? So we're always told, and women of color also are often told that things are impossible. And what we've realized is that our job, our work as social movements is about making the impossible possible. It is about expanding the realm of what is possible. That is what the power of everyday people coming together creates. That is what we do. That is why we're here. And so never let anyone tell you that filibuster reform is impossible. No, it's not. We're going to make it possible. And I'm sure Rahna will have much smarter things to say about that too.
Thank you for that reminder. If you're just joining us, we're taking questions for Ai-jen Poo in the chat. So if there's anyone who wants to jump in with some questions, we have a question from Piano Keys Fun. You mentioned the National Domestic Workers Alliance. How long have you been with the National Domestic Workers Alliance? Can you talk a little bit about your experience there and how that kind of pertains to the fight in front of us?
Sure. I was a co-founder. I am a co-founder of the Domestic Workers Alliance. There were 50 of us, domestic workers and organizers from around the country, who founded the organization in 2007 in Atlanta, Georgia. And I started organizing domestic workers much before that in 1998 in New York City. So I was working locally for a long time, and then after we formed the National Alliance, started doing more work nationally. And I would say that everything I know about organizing, I've learned through organizing domestic workers. And one thing is clear, that we've never won more by demanding less. And this moment is a moment where we need to be demanding what we need. We need to be demanding the jobs we need, the support we need, the care we need, the climate policy we need. And yeah, I think that is, so for domestic workers, we're working really hard to make sure that there is a big investment in care jobs, to make these jobs good jobs for the first time in the history of this country. A lot of people don't know this history, but some of the first domestic workers in this country were enslaved Black women. And ever since, it's always been women of color, immigrant women, women of marginalized social status that have done this work. And the workforce has faced exclusion after exclusion, excluded from the New Deal, excluded from Social Security and occupational safety and health protections over and over again. We have a moment in this jobs and recovery package to really take that on head on and make these jobs dignified jobs with living wages and a union and a path to citizenship for the immigrant workforce. I mean, it's a game changer. So we are all in, and we're super excited to be mobilizing alongside all of you for Recovery Recess, because really the stakes could not be higher for us.
Thank you so much for all the work that you do and are doing. And thank you to everyone who's been asking questions in the chat. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with people watching before we wave to you until we see you again?
Look, I think MoveOn is an awesome organization, and I'm so proud to work alongside Rahna. And you all should know, as members of MoveOn, that this organization has played such a powerful role in weaving together movements and organizations across the ecosystem of groups who are fighting for the country and the future that we deserve. And I'm proud to be a MoveOn supporter. Y'all should be proud. And we are going to do some serious, powerful work together during Recovery Recess and until we win all the things that we deserve. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the inspiration, for your words, and for your work, Ai-jen. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. See you during Recovery Recess.
See you during Recovery Recess. For those of you who missed it earlier and who are just joining us later in the program, members of Congress, speaking of Recovery Recess, are heading home for Congress's spring recess, and they need to hear from us now. It's time for Congress to urgently deliver green jobs, care jobs, justice, green infrastructure, climate solutions, indigenous tribal sovereignty, and real democracy for all of our people. If you head over, open up a new tab so you don't lose us, but if you head over to recoveryrecess.org, you can sign up for socially distanced events that are taking place in person and online throughout recess, March 29th to April 11th. So go ahead, open up a new tab, head over to recoveryrecess.org, where you'll be directed to a map of actions to join. Masks and a physical distancing plan are required for all events, so people are being safe. And you'll also be able to create your own action. Don't forget to follow us on Twitch. And if you're not already a MoveOn member, you can become a member by signing up for our SMS or email lists and join the party. And we'll give you a shout out when we have another live stream coming up. Thanks to our amazing representative, Katie Porter and Ai-jen Poo from the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and esteemed Executive Director, Rahna Epting. And we'd love to actually bring Rahna back to help close us out in style. So Rahna, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Olga. You've done an incredible job. I don't know what more I can add, but I was really touched by the conversations with Representative Porter and with Ai-jen Poo. They're incredible leaders. We're so lucky to have them. We're so lucky to have this MoveOn community. I'm honored that all of you chose to spend your evening with all of us. And I'll just leave us with one concept that keeps me going in the marathon, is that the threat we felt for the last 4 years among our communities and our way of life and the understanding that we're all in this together, it was real. And I feel renewed in this moment of spring, in this new year, to shed myself of the shackles of that feeling and embrace this new landscape, this new political landscape that we made possible. We ushered in a new set of leaders into our federal government in the White House, the Senate, and the House. And they know who delivered that win. It's us, the voters. And they know that win wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for our actions and our advocacy and our mobilizing and our community-centered spirit, steeped in a belief that this society, this government we've created can actually work for all of us. We don't have to just have it work for the wealthy few. And here's my daughter again. But just remember that, and that this marathon is enjoyable. We should do it with joy together, knowing that there is such great possibility in this new moment to actually create the society that we voted for. We voted for in November. So please join us at Recovery Recess. Join us for a virtual or in-person event. We deserve a robust jobs package, green jobs, care jobs that Ai-jen spoke about, a pathway to citizenship for essential workers, domestic workers, dreamers, and TPS holders. We can demand big, bold change. And this is a moment that if we leverage our collective voices, we have such an incredible ability to make it happen. And we need you. We welcome you to join us. We need every single one of you. So I look forward to seeing you out in the field at recoveryrecess.org and onward.